Thanks. Can you all hear me? So I'm a teacher. I like to stand and I like to walk around. I'm not going to stand still. Thank you all for coming. Let me first say the most important thing, and that's thank you to the most critical people who are here today, and that's all of you. Thank you for coming out to make your voices heard. I know that it's Mother's Day weekend, and no doubt you all have family commitments and other obligations, but you're here today, and you're here to defend truth, and you're here to defend democracy, and you're here because you know what's at stake, and you're worried about the future. I'm worried about the future. In fact, I'm terrified about the future. But you know what gives me some solace? It's looking out and seeing all of you out here in the crowd today. People who are willing to sacrifice, willing to fight, willing to stand up for our democracy, willing to ensure that our democracy, our cherished democracy, of the people, by the people, for the people, continues to exist for our children and our grandchildren and our future. Now, I'm here to speak about the future, but I'm a historian, and that means I need to dig into the past. So let me tell you two quick stories. One of them you'll be kind of familiar with, one of them you've never heard of. But taking them together, I think, embodies the fundamental threat to democracy that brings us all here today. The first story is from a book that most of you have probably heard of. It's written by George Orwell, and it's called 1984. How many of you have read 1984? If you haven't read it, don't worry about it. The Trump administration will make sure we're all living in it soon enough. The hero of 1984 is a guy by the name of Winston Smith. Smith works for the government in the Ministry of Truth. And the Ministry of Truth is just a government propaganda agency. And Smith's job is to rewrite history. He literally spends his day cutting people out of historical photos and pasting other people in. Or he rewrites text and headlines from newspapers. Or he falsifies government documents and government records. And he does it all to advance the government's position, no matter how horrible it is, and to manipulate the people so they continue to support the government. That's right, Winston Smith worked for Fox News. But Smith's job exposes him to history, and it exposes him to the truth. And like all of you here today, the truth inspired him to ask questions about his government and to doubt the answers that he was getting. And for these doubts, he's caught and he's tortured. And during the torture session, his tormentor quotes a party slogan at him and then makes him repeat it back. And if you remember nothing else from today's event, I hope you'll remember this slogan, because the government official tells him, if you control the past, you control the future. If you control the past, you control the future. And that's what this government wants. It wants to control education. It wants to control the judicial system. It wants to control science. And it wants to control history itself, to shape the way society thinks, to ensure it stays in power and control. And that brings me to my second story. And here's the one none of you have ever heard of. Up until very recently, I was on a federal government committee created by Congress more than 3 decades ago called the Historical Advisory Committee. We call it the HAC, Historical Advisory Committee. And the HAC consists of a really small group of prominent historians who work with the State Department to declassify government records. The HAC's job, simply, is to ensure that the government provides an accurate and objective account of the past, one that allows the people to hold the government accountable for what it says and does. The HAC, in short, plays a really small but important role in making sure that 1984 doesn't happen here. At least, it did until last week, when the Trump administration fired the entire committee. That's right. That means no more pesky demands for government transparency. No more guardrails to prevent the government from using the past to control the future. No more loud voices demanding accountability and respect. Now, I know this sounds like a small thing, right? On the surface, the elimination of one small committee that none of you have ever heard of pales in comparison to the atrocities we hear coming out of Washington, D.C. on a daily basis. The deportation of innocent people, the destruction of social programs that keep families intact and keep children alive, the constant assault on the very basic and fundamental liberties that define us as Americans and as members of a free society. But I ask you to put the termination of the hack into the context of the administration's other actions. Actions designed not just to control what we do, but control what we think. We live under a government that's banning books that don't fit with the agenda of right-wing extremists. We live under a government that's eliminating scientific agencies that track climate change or that endorse proven medical science. We live under a government that attacks judges and lawyers who dare to defend the Constitution and encourages violence against media outlets that dare to report the facts. We live under a government that's defunding public schools and universities because they dare to have the courage to teach people the realities of America, past and present, good and bad. And yes, we live under a government that, as I have seen with my own eyes, is trying to control the past. But there's one thing the administration isn't counting on. There's one thing that's going to make sure 1984 doesn't happen here, and that thing is you. Because what do we do when fascism is on the rise? We organize. What do we do when fascism's on the rise? What do we do when fascism is on the rise? What do we do when fascism is on the rise? That's right. We organize. We organize to defend democracy for us, for our children, for our friends and neighbors, for people we've never met, and for future generations of Americans, proud and free Americans. And I'm going to turn the mic over to a bunch of people who are going to tell you exactly how we're going to do it.